At the top of the Hollywood food chain stood Ari Emanuel, one of the industry's most powerful figures. But when he stepped in to support Blake and Ryan, it backfired. Ari admitted on a podcast that he fired Baldoni simply because of loyalty to Blake and Ryan. No misconduct, no cause, just blind allegiance.
Admitted that he fired Justin Baldoni because he could, and he was made fun of him. Baldoni, Baloney, whatever his name is, I'm loyal. And I'm loyal to Blake Lively, and I'm loyal to Ryan Reynolds, and so I just bossed it and fired him for no reason.
And that recording, it might become the most important piece of evidence in the case. Because it shows motive. It proves Baldoni was targeted.
Those things, but I'm powerful and I'm Ari Emanuel, my brother's Rahm Emanuel, and he bankrupted Chicago, and we've been acting like gangsters, and so we're just gonna fire Justin Baldoni. Well, he did that, and now it looks like he's being pushed out of Endeavor.
Therefore, Emanuel didn't just hurt his own legacy, he gave Baldoni's team a weapon.
Because he was the most powerful person in Hollywood. Another reason why I believe that Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively felt so confident in everything that they were doing, because they had this guy behind him and they knew that he would just fire someone on a whim or on an allegation.
And when Silver Lake acquired Endeavor, Ari was forced to step down.
Also, Ari Emanuel, Mr. Baloney Baldoni, is no longer the CEO of WME Endeavor.
The Kingmaker lost his crown, and the ripple effect, devastating for Blake and Ryan. Now the script is flipped. The people who once looked untouchable are being exposed. Reynolds, once the internet's favorite funny guy, is now facing serious questions about his parenting, his power plays, and his campaign against Baldoni. Blake's legal strategy? Falling apart. The Me Too law, designed to protect the powerless, is being scrutinized for how it's being used by the powerful. And the public, they're seeing through the spin. The silence is breaking. The press is being called out. And the question everyone is asking, what were they trying so hard to hide? Because when you threaten children, edit documents, mock your enemies on screen, and call it justice, it's not just wrong, it's dangerous. And this time, they might not get away with it.
Effectively filed to be dismissed from the lawsuit against her. Her argument that she is presenting is that the lawsuit in and of itself is illegal, okay, because the matter at hand is pertaining to sexual harassment.
Blake Lively thought she could control the narrative, but what started as a courtroom strategy just turned into a full-blown Hollywood meltdown. She tried to hide behind California's Me Too law, but the judge wasn't having it.
She used the California law as background for her dismissal.
And when Justin Baldoni finally spoke out, the details were so explosive, even Ryan Reynolds couldn't meme his way out of this disaster. We're talking secret recordings, disturbing film scenes involving his own daughter, and a legal move so reckless it could cost them everything. This isn't just a legal case, it's a power play gone horribly wrong. And the most shocking twist? The people they tried to silence aren't staying quiet anymore. Blake Lively didn't just show up to court with her legal team. She showed up with a strategy designed to silence. After being hit with a defamation countersuit by Justin Baldoni, Lively pulled out what many are calling the most powerful weapon in Hollywood's legal playbook, California's updated Me Too law. This isn't just any piece of legislation. California Code of Civil Procedure 47.1 gives individuals making claims related to workplace sexual misconduct near total immunity from defamation lawsuits.
Me Too law out here in California, Code of Civil Procedure 47.1, is a problem for the Baldoni camp.
How big of a problem is it?
In simple terms, if you accuse someone of misconduct, they can't easily sue you for ruining their name, even if the claim turns out to be exaggerated or untrue. It was meant to protect survivors. But now, it's being used by A-list celebrities like Lively to escape consequences. Her team rushed to file a motion to dismiss Baldoni's countersuit. The argument? That the case should be thrown out entirely because the original claims she made were about harassment and therefore fall under the protection of the law, not judged on merit, not proven, just dismissed instantly.
And sometimes I would have people who really resented that because they were like, we just hired you to be an actor. Yet when I went in the meetings, I would just seem like I'm just there to be the actor and ready to get the gig. I wouldn't reveal that I actually need to have authorship in order to feel fulfilled. So I think that for them, sometimes that might have felt like a rug pull, because you're like, you're trying to assert yourself into something that we didn't hire you to do. And so it was a really strange position to be in, because I felt like I don't want to just like be an actor. Like I want to have more authorship.
That's not justice, that's erasure.
She wants the court to use California law. That's her argument. And every federal court has to deal with these conflict of law issues that we call them.
But here's the problem. If the judge sides with Blake, the cost to Baldoni isn't just reputational, he'd be forced to pay her legal fees.
California law relative to the lawsuit against Lively for defamation is a little problematic. So we have not seen the opposition yet that the Wayfair parties are going to make to the motion to dismiss filed by Lively, but I suspect that they're going to want New York over California law. We'll see what they do.
But is it valid though if the judge says yes, you can use California law in this instance? Could they dismiss his case because of that?
And not just standard fees, we're talking punitive damages, maybe even triple damages. That's not just a financial blow, it's a career ender.
Here's the real problem for him, and our concern for Baldoni is if he goes forward and he loses his countersuit based on defamation, there's a huge risk to him, because he then has to pay Lively's attorney's fees, treble damages, punitive damages. It's a huge risk.
The worst part, Blake's argument hinges on one thing, that she believed her story. Not that she had proof, just that she believed it.
It requires Baldoni to prove a higher burden than he would otherwise have to prove in this defamation lawsuit. So he actually has to show that Blake Lively's anything she said, any communication she made about SH, that they were made in malice. And so that's a higher standard that he has to prove. And then the jury has to look at the totality of that evidence and say, is that malice? And there's certainly evidence that would lead one to believe a jury could find that.
That's what her legal team is pushing in court. They're telling the judge that as long as she thought it was true, it couldn't possibly be malicious. Therefore, using a law meant to protect vulnerable voices as a personal shield feels less like justice and more like manipulation. And the public is waking up to it. This case is no longer about two celebrities. It's about whether the truth still matters in a courtroom ruled by media influence and legal loopholes. While Blake Lively tried to sidestep accountability in court, Ryan Reynolds was busy creating a controversy of his own.
Ryan Reynolds was the leader in this. I believe that. I believe Ryan Reynolds was the leader and is the leader in everything that she does. So should we be compassionate? And the answer is no, my friends. We obviously should not be compassionate. You know, that's not how this works, okay? And why do I feel like threatened somehow when I listen to this?
It wasn't about a joke. It was about what he allegedly asked his 7-year-old daughter to do on the set of a major Hollywood film. Reynolds shocked everyone when it came out that he cast his young daughter in the new Deadpool and Wolverine movie.
Hey, when I want your opinion, I'll take Wolverine's out of your mouth.
That's guiltily, that is my daughter, Inez.
I'm so sorry we have to admit that.
And I am Father of the Year over here for allowing her to say such language.
Reports claim he pressured her into delivering a joke about male anatomy. When she hesitated, he didn't protect her. He allegedly threatened to recast her.
He's basically looking at his 7-year-old and being like, well, if you're not going to have what it takes to read this line, which happens to be about, you know, Wolverine's penis, then I'll just go find another actor. Total sicko, the exact opposite in my viewpoint.
Director Sean Levy later admitted they made her repeat that disturbing line from 70 to 500 times.
Gratuitous, that wasn't in the initial script, and what they're perfectly fine with. And you add this to the fact that he slapped a child extra gratuitously, that all he believes is riffing. Now you're hearing from the director of his film that they made the 7-year-old do this line from 70 to 500 times.
A joke about her own father. That isn't quirky dad humor. That's emotional blackmail.
But rather than just using an AI tool for his daughter or using a voice actor for her to say that line that she was uncomfortable saying, he basically says, oh, well, I started looking at different actors and actresses. And then that's when she said, I do want to do it. Wildly manipulative to do to a 7-year-old kid.
Therefore, what was meant to be a playful cameo became a behind-the-scenes scandal. And when you pair this with Reynolds allegedly calling Baldoni a predator in secret, The irony is staggering.
And they want us to believe that Justin Baldoni is the creep in all of this. This is running parallel to him shouting at Justin Baldoni in a penthouse about his wife being uncomfortable.
Reynolds didn't make these accusations publicly. He spread them quietly through Hollywood, labeling Baldoni in private while using his own daughter like a prop on camera.
No person, I don't care how funny you think you are in Hollywood, would want their precious daughter, of all people, to make comments about Hugh Jackman's penis being in their father's mouth.
Therefore, the charming mask he wears is cracking. The public isn't laughing. They're asking, who is the real villain here?
You have to investigate any further because there is no father in his right mind who would want a scene in which his daughter makes a, I guess, homosexual joke about the relationship between him and this Wolverine character who we're starting to have questions about their relationship in real life.
Reynolds wasn't done. As the legal pressure grew, something else emerged. A twisted parody character in Deadpool named Nice Pool. On the surface, it looked like just another joke, but behind the scenes, insiders claim it was modeled after Justin Baldoni. Reynolds himself reportedly admitted this. And when you watch the film, it becomes clear. The appearance, the mannerisms, the subtle digs.
You know, what Ryan Reynolds, has seemingly done, right, is used his power and influence to not only help Blake Lively take over this movie, but, he's used it, on Deadpool and to make fun of Justin.
It was never just a character, it was an attack.
Evidence has come forward from even Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively themselves that all but confirms that, yes, Ryan used his Nice Pool character in Deadpool and Wolverine to mock Justin Baldoni.
Therefore, it wasn't just in the courtroom where Baldoni was under fire. He was being mocked in front of millions through a billion-dollar franchise, all while Reynolds claimed innocence.
No, it won't get dismissed at the 12B6 phase because Brian Friedman will be able to plead around by doing a second amended complaint, and he'll be able to outline, the claims of actual malice and that she wasn't reasonable when she reported this harassment.
This changes everything, because if Reynolds was targeting Baldoni both legally and publicly, it supports Baldoni's claim of actual malice, not just disagreement, intentional character destruction.
Those are not points that a judge decides. Those are not legal determinations. Those are factual determinations. And we leave all of our factual decisions to a fact finder. In this case, that'll be a jury. So Brian Friedman more than likely will get past this phase.
The same man who wanted to humiliate Baldoni in court was mocking him on screen. That's not coincidence. That's strategy. And it might be the piece of evidence that finally turns this whole case upside down.
Ryan Reynolds' statement, as contained in the allegations, is that he went and called Baldoni a predator. I mean, that is just such an over-the-top statement, and it does, just in its own right, seems malicious.
While the courtroom drama raged, another story was bubbling beneath the surface. Baldoni's legal team uncovered something shocking. The New York Times wasn't just reporting on Blake Lively's accusations. They may have helped shape them. Emails, drafts, and metadata allegedly show that the Times was working with Lively's team before the complaint was ever filed. That's like reviewing a movie before it's even made. And it kills the argument that the paper was neutral.
And the arguments that Blake is making and that he is making in the CRD complaints against Justin Baldoni.
This goes beyond journalism. It steps into propaganda, because if the Times was helping Lively spin a narrative before the legal documents were even official, that's not reporting. That's collaboration. Therefore, the court might have to consider whether this collusion helped Lively dodge scrutiny and silence Baldoni.
He can defend himself all day long. We want to make that very clear. If he gets past the 12B6 phase, which we anticipate he will, he can vigorously defend himself with any and all facts that are in the case. The problem happened was when he sued her for defamation in response to her claims of SH against him, which triggered the new Me Too law, which was effective January 1 of 2024 in California. And boy, is it a concern in my mind for the Baldoni camp.
If so, the paper could be dragged into the fight, not as observers, but as participants. And that could change everything. As if the court and media weren't enough, Baldoni's own team turned against him. Stephanie Jones, a PR heavyweight hired to manage the situation, allegedly became a secret informant for Blake and Ryan. According to the lawsuit, Jones got access to private communications by seizing an employee's phone. Those messages ended up in Lively's legal filings, but not before being edited. Therefore, Baldoni wasn't just fighting his accusers, he was fighting betrayal from within. Jones, once respected, is now radioactive. Clients are abandoning her, and her involvement could end up being a key part of the court case. Because if the documents were manipulated, the entire foundation of Lively's argument might crumble.